Awesome. Well, Mr. Sam Sokol, welcome to Heroic Hospitality. Pleasure to see you.
Yeah. Nasifera, good to see you.
We were just chopping it up a little bit with last names, and that's funny. Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. It's our first time meeting.
It is.
Heroic Hospitality. The reason I started this podcast was to have just amazing people, amazing, thoughtful people like you on the podcast. We'll get into why you're here, but really the spirit of the show is to celebrate entrepreneurs and that entrepreneurial journey, anyone that's an enthusiast for nightlife, and somehow, some way, someone's connected to hospitality, whether they like it or not. And so there we go. So here we are. You specifically started a game called Graticube. Well, actually, maybe before we get into that, maybe just tell us a little bit about you and maybe your journey up to this point with your game specifically.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is a great place to be in. I love the intent of what you're doing, and entrepreneurship, I feel like, is important worldwide to nurture. I don't know that it needs to be protected because entrepreneurs tend to be pretty fierce and resilient and pretty awesome. And I kind of feel like in a lot of ways are a certain kind of animal. You're born that way in a way. I feel like that I was. So my journey has been a lot of entrepreneurial things coming up into now.
Okay.
And most of my journey was self-taught.
Okay.
A lot of it was self-taught. I mean, I got a master's in global finance, did the traditional route, but found immediately that I wanted the freedom to be able to explore things. I found personal development and self-growth. And
how old were you when you found that?
2006. I was 14 when I started studying philosophy.
Okay.
And I was just like, none of this really makes sense. Maybe someone has some answers. I had a lot of questions. And so that was my way of attempting to answer them, was first philosophy. And then years later in my 20s, I found personal development and my mind was blown. Read a book called Power versus Force. I don't know if you've ever read this book.
I have not, no.
David Hawkins blew my mind wide open, had this chart of consciousness, and it described the world and how you could sort of calibrate, feel into any energy around you and know whether it supported you in your life and those of others. And so it was it was mind-blowing. It said 0 to 1,000. Here's 1,000 is the most ascended master, and 0 is you wouldn't want to live there. And so it could give a number to fear and to anger and to joy and to all these different kinds of emotions, which is actually baked in part to what we're doing here with the game.
That's amazing. Identifying whatever's happening in your life is the first part of getting through it, over it, or embracing it, right? So I could appreciate that. I'm definitely going to look that book up.
Yeah.
And you have this amazing game that connects people, which we're going to kind of go through a little bit today. I can't wait. You've been recommended to be on the show by a handful of people, and so super happy to have you here today. If you were to distill what the reason why you created this game and maybe the journey of that creation, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you. And it's good to be here, by the power of our friends network. And it's a beautiful,
great friend group.
It is. It's a beautiful constellation of awesome beings. So being on this path of personal development, I played a lot of games in this coursework. So the coursework was accelerated learning. It was experiential learning. So it wasn't black and white, rote memorization. It was you played a game and then you learned about yourself. Because a lot of times people would play their game, that's how they would live their life. So that was really curious, and I was just buzzing after this, wow, what a tremendous experience. And so it was years later that I went to Burning Man. I'm driving away in 2017 with a trailer, a long journey ahead, 20-some hours, a lot of time to think about the experience, and thought, how well did I connect with others? Mm-hmm. And it had a certain sinking feeling that I didn't as well as I wanted to. Did I make any friends? Were there any lasting relationships? Was it just a big party? And as I thought about that, I realized I needed to change something about me. And I considered maybe I could be a better listener. And so I thought about the spirit of Burning Man. Well, maybe I'd be a listener for an hour or a day. And then no, everything's radical at Burning Man. Let's go for a week. And so next year, 2018, I come back and right before I left, I said, okay, that idea was there last year. It's still true for me. I'm going to be a great listener for a week. I'm going to be silent for a whole week. And I had a card in my pocket, so if someone noticed, I didn't want to wear a sign, I didn't want to be a spectacle, but if someone noticed I was silent, this card that said, since I learned to speak, I haven't stopped, and I'm choosing this week to be silent, and if there's something you might want to share, I promise I won't interrupt. And that permission to share was just beautiful. And I heard amazing things. Now, not every time of day do people really want to share deep things, but I also had another card for a day. It was a question card. And so on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would change out the card, and that would be a way to ask a question since I didn't have a voice to ask the question. Like, what do you love? What do you fear? What are the things that inspire you? Some of those cards are great. Some of them were not, terribly inspiring. And as I was driving home thinking about the experience 2018, I kept thinking, this was amazing. I would love for people to have the experience I had. It was very different than the previous year.
Yeah.
How could I share that without having to say, go be silent in a week for Burning Man? Who's going to do that? So I thought, let's see about creating really good question cards and what are the elements of connection. And so the game was born out of that dust storm.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. So that was 2018, and coming back from the burn. So how has the game developed since then? Because you don't know this, but I have like this idea in my mind on creating a game as well that is a self-reflection game that you can use if you're a manager in an environment like a hotel or a restaurant, forcing the individual to connect with themselves before they actually choose, because you make a choice to come to work and a choice to get ready, to engage with others. And so I have this idea, but it's really hard to flush out. How did you flush this out? And like how many different stages has this seen up to this point?
Well, great questions.
And then we'll talk about Deeprock shortly after this. Yeah, so.
How he came into the journey. Well, great questions. I appreciate your curiosity. And
yeah.
I think you mentioned something before, and I think the word is awareness, the power of awareness. And then after that becomes a space of, you can set an intention, right? So you say, I'm aware of this thing I want to do. I want to be more thoughtful in the way I come to work and interact with people. So now how do I do that optimally? And connecting maybe internally. We often look for a book to tell us, and a game is a great way to bring up awareness, but ultimately it's reminding us of who we really are. It's reminding us, well, where did that idea...
It's almost like a third party.
It is.
Where now you earn the right to be honest or to listen or to engage, whatever that is, So
yeah, and I think of our relationships as mirrors, right? They're focusing back attention on us to say, okay, you said you wanted this in relationship with others, do you? And you can't synergize alone. So that idea of the third party, to me, is that synergy. It's like our interaction together today will bring up things we didn't think of on our own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's the power of it. And iterations, lots of them. I started with little, printed out my computer, little pieces of paper. Later, laminated those, went to Kinko's. I had dice that I literally had 3 dice that I hand carved. I just put a little wood burner to work and put words on it. So it was super basic to begin with. And then over time, you just sort of follow the next step. I call it the breadcrumbs. What's the next breadcrumb? Cool. Let's get back to, wherever this could go. But
breadcrumbs are in what you're speaking of come in the form of this interaction with others too. So how I'm sure that when you expose this game and this idea to your close friends, how have they seen it evolve? Because I'm sure they have a similar story, but I'd love to hear what you think about like that specifically, because
the evolution is interesting. When we talk about friends, there's this, focus on biases. I think a lot about biases because they're running us or running me more than I recognize sometimes. And Elon Musk posted something about 50 biases you should know. Whether you like them or not, it's useful to know what your biases are. And one of them is confirmation bias. So while confirmation bias can be useful because you have a friend group that can help you curate and help you practice and help you take this out, it's also the whole world isn't that way. So if you begin to think, well, the whole world is the same as my friend group, then you're stuck in that bias that's untrue about the world. And so I think my friends have seen this evolve and been very supportive. And some of them not as much, just because it's not their kind of game. So you learn to say, okay, I don't have to make this game for everyone. I want to make it playable by anyone, but not everyone will want to play it.
Sure.
So they've seen the iterations go from 3 dice to 2 dice from wooden dice now to acrylic dice, which are the ones we have here. They're beautiful dice. We started with a different box design. It's grown to be a true cube, the box design, and it's iterative. So it's just moment by moment. You play with someone, you get feedback. You play with someone, you get feedback. The feedback was it's too complicated initially, so we said, how do we make it simpler?
How long ago was that? But that when you got that feedback, when you had to make a change to support that feedback, and obviously you agreed with it because you wouldn't have changed it if you didn't agree. So.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I think is when we sort of saw like, hey, you could make this game simpler. What could we do to make this simpler? And my thought was, I always wanted to see this work anywhere in the world, right? Now, I know that has to be different languages for it to work anywhere, unless people speak English everywhere, and they don't, obviously.
Yeah.
Some people do in China and some people in other places, but we have QR codes that can help. You click on any of the QR codes, it'll take you there. You could learn more. But the point is that people can play just if you drop this in a party. In other words, you put the cards out in the dice and walk away, no instructions at all. People will figure it out. Right. And it's kind of funny, right? I don't know what your concept of God is, but I sort of imagine this God moment where God like throws out all the pieces and the parts, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And there's just like game pieces, just, everything's out there. And then someone goes, oh, here's how you're supposed to play. And so it's a magic moment.
Sure.
It's actually a lot less instructions.
Fascinating.
We have this one card that's called the No Rules card. And it's spelled K-N-O-W, but the N and the O are bolded.
Okay.
And the K and the W are kind of faded.
Yep.
And so the idea is that some people like the rigidity of structure and in a game, and others are like, well, let me just play the way I want to play. So the game can be played either way. And so over time we've made it so that it's versatile. We didn't want to put too much pressure on people, and play how you want. It's all an invitation. If you don't want to do it this way, do it the way you want to play it.
So if 2 years ago is when you made that adjustment or tweak, when did you actually start exposing this in a way, not a commercial way, because that doesn't feel like a commercial type of game at all.
Right, it's not.
And nor does it sound like you aspire for it to be. But when did you actually start the momentum of the game? Like you said, 2 years ago was the tweak and change. How much before that did you?
So yeah. How much before?
But how much before the 2 years did you actually start exposing the game in a way that was a little bit more to the masses?
Yeah, well, it was mostly just getting it out to anyone who would want to test it. Say, I've got a game, and most people are like, "Oh, game! I love games." And so there was pretty good reception of that, and we would give it to friends, and we'd go out to entrepreneurs, we'd go out to events, we tried anywhere I could get anyone to play, and anyone I could invite.
So was that like a year or 2 years before that? So how long is the game? Maybe the better question is how long has the game been in existence?
So 2020 is when we really started to like make versions of the game could be tried by people. And then in 2021, that's when we got to connect with Deepak Chopra. And so we had some prototypes of his game that we made for him. I'll tell you about that when it's time. But previous to that, we just made, hundreds of copies so that we could get them out there and people could try them and just get feedback. Say, hey, what did you think of this? Doing Zoom calls. Say, hey, can we do this as a Zoom call? It's an in-person game. It's a box with cards, but can you also do it online? And there was a thought, do we want this to be an app? Do we want this to be online? And ultimately, what's great about this game is that people play in person. They get to connect eye to eye. So it can be on Zoom, it can be on a phone, but ultimately, like being in person is pretty rewarding.
What are some of what are the two main things that people that you feel and the feedback you've gotten come out of the game with? What are the two aha moments?
One is that people are surprised because when you tell someone, hey, this is a game that'll allow you to deepen connection and drop in with people, get past that superficial conversation, they go, oh, that's nice. But when they play it, they go, oh my God, the world needs this. I just met my new best friend. I can't believe I didn't know this about this person. We've been friends for 10 years. So there's that excitement in connection that's, to me, it's sort of obvious. And I think to you it would be obvious. And maybe some of the people that go to Burning Man and who are like deep into wanting to be in community, wanting to be in connection, that's where you want to live. And to others, it's a surprise that all that was there. And it's like, it's always there. What if you asked a different question? What if you had the courage to have that conversation beyond the superficial?
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's the reason, one of the main pillars of why we opened Beacon is to expose this idea of our version of connection and to allow people into our world a little bit, and the same with the podcast. And so when we were speaking a week and a half ago or something, I mean, we just met. So,
yes.
But the talk of doing something here at Beacon and getting and allowing people to see this game and connect with this game and connect not with the game, but with the people that are around them. And so on October 8th, right, we are going to host you and some strangers. Hopefully, they're all strangers.
Perfect strangers.
Perfect strangers, right? And people are going to be able to. And I wanted to drop this in the center of the of the podcast so people can understand what this looks like,
right?
And then how they see themselves maybe at this event on October 8th, which is a Sunday, right?
It is.
Yep,
Yeah,
Sunday.
it's a Sunday.
And so maybe tell us about what this is going to look like for people, because I want to do my best to expose this day, because it just is going to be fascinating. I can't wait to participate. So,
well, I think it's going to be different, you know,
Okay.
and they say better is different, but different isn't always better.
Yeah.
So you,
Sure.
you get to decide if better is going to work in this case. And it's an invitation to try something different and new and a little vulnerable. There's
Yep.
some trust involved in that. There's some courage to go and try something new and different. And what I find is that sometimes people, they have a certain concept in their mind. And so they're like different parts of us, right? You talk about different parts of things.
which is restricting in a lot of ways, huh?
Yeah, the mind is this thing that is the yak, right? It's like, well, but, you know, it has all these sort of like protective qualities.
Reverts back to what's familiar.
Yeah, and the amygdala, it tends to be a big part of that. The fear center of the brain is you've got this like fear-based reptilian brain going, I don't know. Is it safe?
Yeah.
It's not a rattlesnake, it's a conversation. And you want to be cautious of the rattlesnake, but you know, be able to discern the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it'll be different. And so if you have the courage to go and have a conversation, what I find to be, my friend, he's from the UK, his mom is French. And he said he took the game with him and he played with her. He said what was interesting is normally she would ask questions in their relationship that were very pointed towards an outcome, towards what she wanted to know. And in the game it says, would you be willing to fully listen? She read that and she took it to heart. And he said it was the best conversation he's remembered having with her because she actually really listened. So in a way, people think, oh, I've got to expose myself and share all these things. But there's also really a lot of power and beauty to being the witness, being willing to listen, holding space for someone else to share because they may also be afraid of sharing. And so it's coming together and allowing that space to be held. And it's funny, you'll have a group of 4 people play the game or up to 6, you know, more than that. It just becomes a lot to wait to hear
Sure.
story. But let's say it's 4 people. It's like a little bubble forms. And once that's there, even if it's strangers, these perfect strangers that come together, people don't want anyone new to join the game.
Sure.
Because like, no, this is we know these people. They're great. Yeah, you met them 5 minutes ago. Isn't that cool?
Right. Yeah. Putting some intentions. What we're going to do is we're going to put as many tables as we can fit on the dance floor, get some chairs, welcome people in. It'll be early in the afternoon, right?
Yep.
What time's 5, you said?
I think you
Or
said 3 to
3.
6.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 3. So
earlier.
because
Yeah.
we wanted people to be in a state of connection and of presence, and so we didn't want to do it too late in the evening because intoxication happens,
Right.
especially in a bar, right?
So it can happen in a bar.
Yeah, and we will encourage people to consume alcohol, but it's also like being present with yourself is going to be really important, and we will encourage people just to come as you are and like be as you are, and it's not always easy, and but this is an opportunity to connect not only with yourself but with others and to learn something new.
Yeah, and there's beauty in, see, there's so many people, I don't know, I hear these conversations sometimes like, hey, I wish I had somebody who I could really talk to. I wish I could get past that. I don't go out because, and there are a lot of reasons that people have stopped coming out. And maybe it's because Netflix is awesome. Maybe it's because the home is like super comfortable or whatever it is. But that invitation to go out to meet somebody, and what if you could feel like, oh, I feel respected. I feel heard. And that was the big thing I noticed. When I was silent for that week at Burning Man, people interrupted a lot. And I feel like that became almost a sport. I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it was a premeditation of interruption.
Right. It's not a permission. You just interrupted.
Yeah. Is it okay if I interrupt? Well, it must be, because you're telling me you're going to interrupt. You know, so it's interesting that in the game that happens less frequently. And so I feel like a lot of people stay home because they feel a little shut down. They feel like, I don't get to share what's important to me. No one really wants to hear my story. And yet when you play this game, I find that people will say, wow, I feel like I love these people and I've just met them. So whatever your concept of love is, I'm not going to tread on that. But the sense of being connected in that moment, I think, is what a lot of people are looking for. And yeah, some people look for drugs. They're going to take something like, oh, this makes me feel connected. Probably what it does, it shuts down that fear center of the brain and the yak, and it turns it down a little bit so other parts of you you can come forward, and that's what shows up in the game.
And that's a real opportunity to connect that you just spoke about. But deep connections at 3 and 5 a.m. It's like they exist, but they might you might think it's more deep than it actually is, because you're also in a state of an altered state as well.
And it could be artificial for a lot of reasons, right? Because can you have that connection when you're sober becomes a question, right? You might meet somebody in that heightened state, so to speak, which was a shortcut to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you meet them again the next day or a week later and you go, ooh, do I still like them? Are they still that person that was in that heightened state? Or was that artificial because of the substance that was present?
I'm playing a game. It's called Sobriety. And it's been 60 days, 61 days. Francesca encouraged me.
Yeah.
Actually, you can get encouragement from people to do things like that, to choose to not drink alcohol. But it's up to you to when you actually are ready for something like that. And this came in the form of a handful of reasons why I chose that. But it's very interesting to connect with people in social environments when intoxication is the norm. It's very interesting. And I appreciate this journey. I say sober. I don't drink alcohol right now. But it's interesting because there are so many people that I thought, that I was connected with at certain periods of time, that I love them and they're my friends. But it's now I aspire to ask a little bit deeper of a question. I've been on this journey of being a great listener now for about 15 years. And it's something that I continually need to check in with. Am I being a great listener? And it's hard. I think that it's going to be something that I aspire to be a great listener until the day I die. Because it's challenging. The world isn't designed to be a great listener. And so it takes intention and it takes commitment in a lot of ways. And so to be silent at Burning Man, I've been there. Wow. Hats off to you for making that choice and experiencing that. Something beautiful came from it, right? And so however we can evolve as humans, we should pay attention to that. And I think that, did you have an accountability system with the silence, or did you speak to people like, hey, if I stray, did you have any accountability system with that? No,
I was certain that it was, for me, the whole thing, life is an experiment.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And so I run these many experiments inside of it, and Burning Man itself is an experiment, right?
Yeah.
70,000 people, a temporary city, all the things that go into that. It's a wild experiment within experiment within an experiment. And for me, I didn't have any concern about speaking, that I would want to speak. It was that I wasn't sure what I would encounter.
Okay.
I was committed, and I'm very good at being committed. I'm also, the last 4 years I did the burn was 100% sober. No alcohol, no drugs, nothing. And
I think it's important listeners can hear that, because people think it is just a blowout rager, which it is.
Yeah. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yes.
The same way this default world life can be the way you want it to be. And again, it comes back to intention. It comes back to a question of how you want to be present. I feel like there's a lot of busyness in life, and we can get lost in that busyness and the doing of life. And how can we be better as human beings, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be? And so each person gets to choose that. That's the beauty of it. It's like you get to choose how you want to be. I get to choose. And in these sober moments, what do we notice? What do we notice, and what can we learn from that? So I think it's all beautiful. There's a lot I learned in that silence, and I think you're right about being a lifelong listener. I think it is a journey. I don't see it as a destination. I didn't come back thinking I want to be silent and do a lot of these silent retreats, although I think there's a lot of value in that. I think it's also about finding great balance. And I think about music, right? So music, we think of sometimes as the notes, and sometimes music is the space between the notes.
That's beautiful. I was with a group of very good friends, some of my closest friends, last Friday. And we were just hanging out in the backyard at a picnic table, and, not and choosing to intoxicate is like getting to know yourself a lot. And I was like, I need to read more books. This idea of being able to contribute in a way that is more than just who I am and who you are, because we were all really good friends around the table. And I, for some reason, just thought about, I need to read more books, like, and just be able to add more value and be able to just be more interested in things. And so I picked up the book. I picked up a handful of books, but it was a Navy SEAL book, Time to Make Your Bed, or How to Make Your Bed, or something like that. Like, and it's a book that I've just been kicking around, and I just started reading it again, and I find value in that. You know, I find value in being like, oh, I'm present. I actually want to do something that isn't something I have been doing. So I think it just opens your eyes when you can slow down, do your best to listen, and however you choose to engage, just pay attention to, you know, where you are, you know, on with where you're standing. And so that was eye-opening for me.
I really love that. And I think there's a question too, to say in that moment that we're sitting around as friends, what is the desire to drink? Where does that come from? Or where's the desire to maybe take a pill or whatever it is that, and often I would say that that's probably not coming from love. Maybe there's a fear there. And I think often it's that, oh, maybe I won't connect. I don't feel so good. This is awkward. And there's a sense of leaning into that discomfort is where a lot of the joy in life actually comes from next. So there's a little bit of that pain first. And if you are always avoiding the pain, then maybe you don't get to read that book. Maybe you don't get to live a life of service. Maybe you don't get to connect with the next friend that's a perfect stranger waiting for you to connect with them. So it feels like in those sober moments, we make choices that are different, right? When you're sober, you can go read that book. But when you're drunk, you're not going to go, wow, this looks really fun. Look at these small letters. That's probably not going to happen. So there's something really beautiful in the intention, just sitting in that moment saying, okay, what is it that I'm feeling that's uncomfortable? And can I lean into this? Is this the rattlesnake that's going to kill me?
Right. It's a great analogy. Yeah.
Right. Or can I stay in this moment? And what does it look like to lean into that discomfort?
Love it. Well, let's open this up. Let's see. Give me the
quick rundown.
Yeah, let's get the rundown.
All
and
right.
You were saying that you can like really have this game here, or you can have this game here.
Well, and what's funny about it, you know, people ask, are there different like cards? Are they more challenging or easy? And it's funny because you'll decide how you want to answer it. Someone can take what sounds like an easy card to answer and make it very deep and meaningful beyond what you ever thought was possible, or they might answer it in a way that feels kind of trite. And so it's up to each one of us. So we'll decide how deep we go. So the idea is pull a card, roll the dice, or roll the dice, pull a card, however you want. Okay. All the ones up there, I put them in kind of this heart shape. And those are the story cards. And then the blue ones are curiosity cards. Red ones are gratitude cards. And the essence is pull a card, roll the dice, share a story. It's all an invitation. You only do what you want to do. And during the game, if you want to share a gratitude to somebody, say, thank you for sharing. You can always do that at any time. And the red cards are a way to just sort of hand off a token of appreciation. Say, I appreciate, and here's why. So it's a bit of like a talking stick. Like I maybe what you shared resonated me for these reasons. The blue cards, those curiosity cards, have questions on them. Okay. So you may take a look for a moment. Maybe you got two over there, and I put two in front of me.
So these, I'm picking the blue one first.
Yeah, take a look at the blue. Just put them in your hand. Okay. All the red and the blue are technically in your hand here. And these are questions, once you hear someone share in the game, you could hand them as, hey, would you be willing to share more with me or go a little deeper? Okay. And again, everything's an invitation. They go, nope. They may say, oh, thank you, and yes, and what would you like to know? So you could take your question a little bit deeper, more specific to what you want to know.
So curiosity, so if I choose to engage with this card, I would just read the card and then give my answer.
You could do that, absolutely, or you could hand it to someone else. So if I'm sharing something and you have a curiosity, you might hand me a curiosity card. Okay. If you're sharing and I have a curiosity, I might hand you a curiosity card. So again, you can play however you want. The flexibility of the game is pretty wide.
But for this purpose here, so we're going to pull these two cards. Are we going to roll a dice right now?
Yep. So why don't we start with, go ahead and if you'd be willing to grab any one of those story cards. And the dice, you can go either direction with that. You can roll a dice first or read the card.
Okay. And just pick a dice?
You go for both of them and roll both. You have time and space in your hands. One is emotional spaces and the other one is time frame. All right. What did you get here?
Guilt and now.
Guilt and now?
Guilt and now.
Okay, cool. And then what is your card?
The story card?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Share what you believe you are doing right. Ask others to share what they think you are doing right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's two people playing, so you would be that person on the receiving end. So now, how do these dice influence this if I choose to just tell you what I think I'm doing right now, and then you can have...
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's an opportunity to get creative, feel into it, and sometimes it's not obvious, right? It may not be obvious right now because guilt and doing something right may not be obvious. But what I normally advise is whatever first comes to mind, share that if you're willing, and then consider after. Come back to the dice. So just share whatever's true for you in the moment.
Okay.
And you might find that guilt and now have made their way into the story.
Awesome. So I think one of the things I'm doing right now is making an exaggerated effort to be present and to aspire to be a conduit for creativity and to expose people to and to help guide people through this podcast that whomever I have on might influence their life in a positive way. So I'm really just trying to give back in that way. And it's been amazing, and I've had a lot of great feedback, and I meet a lot of great people like you, and it gives me the freedom and ability to try to generate conversations with people I maybe would not have. Like this is a great example of that, right? And so I kind of get to ask, hey, if I don't know someone, it's like, hey, be on my podcast, right? And so then selfishly I get to learn as well, but really the end result is whoever's watching or listening, that like they can kind of take whatever advice they find from the guest and maybe fold it into their old life. So that's what I think one of the things I'm doing right. So trying to be present and give gifts of nuggets of knowledge to others, because we're obviously a little older than some of the people listening. So
it's true. That's true. So first of all, thank you for sharing that. And then how did guilt now that you've shared that, is there any way that guilt now might show up in that expression of where you are?
Guilt. In relating to my answer? So I'm, first of all, I'm open but happy to share. I'm not skirting the conversation. I'm not skirting answering that. I don't really have something right now, but since I don't have something right now, would it just be like, can I think about this? Can we go around the table?
100%.
Okay,
right.
cool.
And one thing that can happen with guilt and now sometimes don't go together, because I don't feel guilt from you now, but I wonder in the past there might have been a moment where you go, wow, like you said, you care about listening and exaggerated presence.
Yeah,
so I wonder if in the past.
So I do have
maybe
guilt then, yeah. So the guilt, I guess, would be that I have, in certain periods of my life, been more of someone that wants to receive something than to give something. So it's not that I'm doing this because I felt guilt because I've been receiving more than I'm giving, but if I were to answer that question, it would be that, because there are periods of time, especially when you're younger, you're just like, whatever it is, make more money or just aspire to be higher on the food chain when it comes to like whatever career you're in, going for the next chapter of your life and just seeing that like destination and not enjoying the journey, right?
Right.
And so I think that receiving more than giving, specifically relating to what I'm doing now in regards to what you believe you're doing right, I guess that's would be my answer. So
yeah, first of all, I have a gratitude card for you.
Okay, cool.
This is just to express my
is
gratitude.
This like a thank you?
It's a thank you, and I really appreciate you being willing to share that. It's a vulnerable thing to share, and also I can feel the truth of it from you. And I love what you said. Exaggerated presence. That's just so good. Like exaggerated presence. It's like when you feel like maybe you haven't presence. It's fun to go the other way and like really exaggerate that quality to kind of find where you want to be on that spectrum of giving and receiving, as you put it. Cool. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And I feel like it's just so cool. So what you're doing right, that's the question to me. I think that you're joyful.
Oh, right. Okay. So just to repeat this. So
right.
I picked the card. I said what I thought I was doing right now, and now ask others to share what you think they're doing right. So this would be only you here, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
Is it okay? Is that cool?
Please. Yeah. No. I just
because you don't have to.
I just want to make sure people understand the game. That's all.
Of course. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
So some people look at the doing and they say that's what you're doing right, And we'll talk a little bit later about the Deepak connection, and this will connect in a moment. But what I think you're doing right is evidenced by your smile and your energy. I feel like a kindred spiritness between us, in like I almost feel like we're kids on a journey of exploration. Like there's this curiosity, like, oh, isn't that cool? Let's try this, let's try that. Yeah. And so I feel the joy you have, and to me that's doing it right. Cool. Because you could do a lot of things right. You talked about money, you talked about wanting to be seen as a certain way. Maybe when you're a kid, you're like these, and then you get a little older and you're like, oh, cool. Yeah. But ultimately, where does that true joy come from? And I think it's from being happy, doing what you're doing. Joy is joy, like living a life of joy. And I see you wanting to do that more in your exaggerated presence.
Thank you.
I just want to reflect that back.
Yeah. Appreciate the kind words. Okay. So you gave me this gratitude card because you're saying thank you. So thank you for this. If a story personally resonates with you, feel free to give this card and briefly share your gratitude.
So that becomes your card. It's now in your hands. So you had 3 gratitude cards. Now you have 4. And you've got 2 curiosity cards. So you basically have all those cards in your hand to use however you want as we play. So that's how the game.
So there really is no rules.
No rules.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
And you can play however you want. You can play with the dice, you can play without the dice. One guy, what he likes to do. So a lot of variations are coming up. You asked about the evolution of the game. He says, "Well, I take the dice in my hand and I look at each word and I wait to feel the energy of it. And if that's really something comes up for me in that word, then I place that, and that's the word that I use. And then the other one, the time die, does the same thing. And so instead of rolling them, he feels into whatever wants to be expressed in that moment. Another one of my friends does the same thing, but with his eyes closed. He just keeps turning it until he feels like, oh, that might be it. So again, no rules, and people find their own way. There's that flexibility to do this however you want, because ultimately it's about sharing, however you want to share, however you want to be seen, and however you want to witness others.
And I noticed this QR code on the back. I'm assuming that's a QR code.
It is.
So what is this then? How does this help guide the game, or what is the point of that?
It does guide the game. It's a web page. It takes you to an audio snippet that tells you more about that particular character. If you wanted to share about your experience, offer a game variation that you like, it's a way to connect a little bit more socially. It feels weird sometimes in the game to record if someone doesn't want to share with their closest friends. They don't want to be recorded and also share. So we don't tend to record many of these games. I mean, obviously on a podcast, and again, your willingness to share. But often it's someone goes to this Gratisphere that we're building, which is an audio place where you can share, here's what I learned from the game, here's what it's done for me, without maybe sharing that personal story, or choosing to say, here's how I answered the card. Yeah. And that might be inspirational to someone else. So then they hear that story and want to do something a little bit different, to your point about the podcast and its value.
But what wasn't clear to me was the word guilt, right? And so your prompt helped me answer that question. Right. So it really is a game that is inspired to connect people in that way. It's like, well, I don't know what's your version of how I should behave at this exact moment? Not behave, but answer feel into whatever you're feeling at this time. Like, you encouraged me to do something, and then I responded, and then I did it. But I didn't know to do it. Right? Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of the game.
I think it is part of the beauty of the game. One of my friends said that he felt that one of the tenets of friendship is being able to enjoy silence together comfortably. Yeah. And in that silence, some people, you ask them a question, and if you think back to being in a classroom, a teacher asks you a question, you go, well, I really hope I have the answer, right? Yeah. You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to feel like you're not smart, or that, you can't connect with other people. And so there's that moment of being put on the spot that people can get really, so there's like past trauma that's there. And yet when we give each other a chance, say, take a moment. It's okay. Yeah. You may not know the answer. That thoughtful moment, as opposed to the autopilot conversation, where you're from, what do you do? We've got these stored answers. Well, I'm from here, I do this. And then that becomes the dead conversation. What do I want to know? Like, there's nothing more there. But when we take those thoughtful moments in friendship together, and we allow that to be there, be in the mystery together, I think that's a sign of friendship.
So amazing. One of my really good friends, Paul, asked me a question about why I was opening. We're opening another club, another nightclub. We're not immersive art and dance bar, but it's an immersive art and dance lounge. So anyway, we could talk offline about that. But I didn't love the answer I gave him, because I was very much a reactionary answer. Mm-hmm. And I called him later that night, and I was like, actually, I want to retract, and I want to re-engage with the question. do you have a second? And then we ended up talking about it, and I just felt better after I had the time to think about it, because you need to slow down. What is this?
It's another Graticube card.
Oh, there we go. All right, sweet.
Yeah.
And that's how the game is played.
That's how it's played.
How
I don't
it's
mean to
played.
interrupt, though. Please continue.
No, please, no, that was it. And then, but it wasn't until I went home and I was like, yeah, I'm actually, that wasn't it. It was so far from the truth.
Yeah.
Not far from the truth, but it wasn't a truthful answer, because I didn't give it the time and the thoughtfulness that needed to happen, because he asked me a very good question. He asked me a very sincere question. He really cares about me and my journey, and so my answer didn't mirror that care, and so I think that's also that being presence and aspiring to be a great listener, and taking the time to truly, be with somebody. And that was an example of me not being with somebody. So,
but also the awareness to know that, and then to the action point. And that's so critical, is like you became aware of something. And then instead of saying, well, okay, I missed that opportunity, you went and you made a new attempt, right? You called him and you said, hey, by the way, I had this thought and it wasn't comfortable, and I want to come back to you and give you the most present answer coming from me. And I can only imagine that he received that well.
Yeah, he was very appreciative. Okay, so here we are in this game. You gave me another card. Can I read the gratitude card that you gave me?
So they're all the same. Yep. Basically,
the same.
all the
Okay, got
gratitude
it.
cards are the same. It's just an expression and a token of appreciation.
Cool. So now what's the next step in the game?
So what we would do is, if it were my turn, I'd pick a card, roll the dice. The other thing is we could kind of demo the end game. So there's you'd play as many rounds like this as you desire that you have time for, and then at the very end, it's called a gift card round.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different. So I could preview that for you if you want to see a little
I
bit.
love that. Yeah.
So on the bottom of each of these cards, you'll see, and we don't have to pull them all out.
Okay.
I know what's on them, and I can tell you. But if you wanted to, we could grab a couple here.
Yeah, let's do it.
So just grab a few, and at the bottom you'll see
There's different colors too.
different colors, different names. So these are the characters in the game. There are 8 characters, and they're actually connected to different energy centers in the body. So like storyteller appropriately is connected to the throat chakra, and you'll see if you wanted to go to that level of depth, but you don't need to know that to play the game. So basically, as you look at these characters, each one of them, for example, here I've got Appreciato, you've got storyteller, listener, and purveyor of love. Those are a few of the characters. As we've had this time to connect with each other, I'm getting to notice how you show up in our interaction.
Okay.
And so at the end, the gift card round, I would give you one card of how I received our time together. I would say, I think you were one of these characters, and we can do this. We can absolutely do this because we've already had.
But you just chose some, so you're going to pick whatever
I'm going
is
to pick
in.
one of the 8 that I know, and there's a reference card.
Okay.
I'm going to grab this reference card so that you can see this. Here you go. There's a reference card. And I'll show you all different 8 characters. So what you'll do is you'll pick one for yourself.
Randomly, without picking.
No, you'll pick one specific one for yourself that matches how you felt you showed up, and also one for me. So I'll pick one for you and one for me. You'll pick one for you and one for me.
Okay.
And then that's the round that finishes the game. So you want to try it?
Oh yeah.
Give it a shot?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just picked 2 cards, but I should pick how many? Or we just look through them.
Well, just look through them and see. You can see the reference card where all the characters are, and all we're looking at is the bottom of the card. We're not actually looking at the top of the question, although that's another variation of how you can play, depending on what time you have. But considering the bottom character alone, just how I thought you showed up, how I thought I showed up, I'm going to pick for you and for me.
Well, I'm going to choose listener for you. That story of you at the 2018 burn. Just as an example of that, and it reignites my desire to be a great listener. So thank you for that, and that's how I'll share my input with you. Right?
Thank you. And what would you pick for yourself?
I would say, I guess I told a couple stories. Mm-hmm. I never really do that on the podcast. I actually make an exaggerated effort to not talk about myself much on the podcast, because it really is about whoever the guest is, and so this is probably the most I've spoke, especially about myself on the podcast. So I'd say storyteller. I told a couple stories.
Yeah, I see that, and by the
but
way,
I mean that's pretty like linear, but whatever.
No, it's perfect. And I see you as a good storyteller. The card I have for you is actually Inspirator.
Oh, thank you.
I feel inspired by your desire to take this presence, this exaggerated presence based on your awareness, based on your desire to explore sobriety and to take that out to brighten people's lives. I mean, you have a podcast, you are doing this, and this is a game about conversation. So I'm appreciative that you have shared more about yourself, and that's truly a gift. So
well, thank you
I
so
think
much.
that's inspirational. And I would give myself the Appreciado card.
Okay.
I'm so grateful to be here. I think these are the kind of conversations that I really enjoy most. And I'm a deep appreciation for you and the crew that's here and getting to know them. And yeah, it's just a joy.
Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Is there anything how can we support you? Or maybe let's talk about Deepak before we sign off.
Yeah, it might
here.
be a good opportunity.
Yeah, let's hear that journey with that amazing.
Well, I'll be
man.
brief because I know we're probably at time. I don't know.
No, there's no time. There's no
Okay.
time at all. If anything, I respect your time more than anything. So for me, we're good.
It's a blast to be here with you. Yeah,
thanks.
I'm sure we could go on all day. But so briefly, I'll share. So my friend Terry Torak, he's my business partner in this, met Deepak Chopra 20 years ago.
Okay.
And some people don't know Deepak Chopra, which is a lot of people sort of in the younger generations don't know Deepak Chopra because I think he's appealed to older audiences. But he's written 95 books. He has podcasts. He's done meditation challenges with Oprah Winfrey. And some people are like, who's Oprah Winfrey? Maybe not, maybe. But he's somebody who I think brought a lot of great traditions and knowledge from the East to the West. And he's a medical doctor with credentials of the West. So a wicked smart guy who's thought a lot about consciousness and sees the value of bringing that to people. He wrote a book called Abundance, The Inner Path to Wealth. One I think a lot of people know of as the 7 Spiritual Laws. And so if you're curious about manifestation, if you're curious about awareness and how you connect with yourself and then your external environment, that's a great read. He wrote one about total meditation. So that's sort of his bailiwick, if you will, is meditation. And he speaks around the world. He's one of what I would call like the celebrity's celebrity, right? There are people that consider themselves a celebrity and are celebrities. And they're like, yeah, but this guy.
Sure, I understand.
So Terry met him some 20 years ago. And then as we were talking about this game and coming up with the questions, partly, of course, from my Burning Man experience, but also from entrepreneurship. And he said, do you think we could take a book and play it as a game using Graticube? And so I said, I don't know, let's try it. So we read a couple of his books and we took the cards from our reading. We mind mapped the whole thing, went back and forth. We each had like, I think it was 100 and some cards, only 64 going to the game. So we had to kill our darlings. And that really generated, I think, really a lot of fun in the game.
And then, who was around the table when you were doing this?
You know, it was he and I. We had the book, and he was reading it in Connecticut. I was reading it in Denver. We came together. We did a creative process of having to kill our darlings. Sounds murderous. But basically, we had to, only choose the best cards, right? And ultimately, we got to connect with Deepak. We sent him a few text messages. Hey, we've been working on this thing. What do you think? Can we meet? And he said, yeah. And so we go out to Lake Nona. He'd moved from San Diego to Lake Nona, Florida. And he invited us to dinner. Cool. So here we're going to, basically, if you're in Denver, Colfax and Broadway, it would be like any Indian restaurant, right? You've got your CVS, you've got your pawn shop, a gas station, and then Indian restaurant. And so we're like, okay, well, the Indian restaurant's got to be great because those are the best places, right? So we're at this little place, and it was awesome. The food was great, and his friend is starting to play it, and she opens the box and rolls the dice, pulls a card. And she, oh my God, she's like squealing with delight. She's so happy with it. And Deepak looks over and says, well, what is that? And she says, Deepak, it's your game. You should come play it. And we had done a full prototype of the game, and he hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, whoa.
So we previewed it for him as dinner.
At this Indian restaurant.
Yeah. And so he gets the dice, and he rolls, and you're just like, what is Deepak Chopra going to roll, right? Yeah. And he pulls a card. I'm like, what card is he going to get? Is this going to be a great moment?
Right.
And so he picks up he rolls a dice. The dice are joy and now. I'm like, of course they're joy now. And then the next card he pulls is describe success and invite each person playing to share one sentence of what success means to them. And so he looks at the dice, he looks at the card, and he says, joy is the only measure of success. And the mic drops, right? He's like, of course. But he goes on to say that a lot of people are chasing joy, right? Follow your bliss.
Yep.
Well, to follow your bliss means you're not in bliss. You're following it. He says, literally, the path is joy. It's not go to joy. It's
You're right.
let everything on the path be joyful. And when you were sharing
Joy is a
before,
result.
Joy is the path itself. It's the journey. There's no destination, right? You don't get to joy.
Right.
It's any moment you could decide to be joyful. In this everlasting now moment, we can be joyful. And so what you shared before and the energy I was feeling from you was joy in being sober, joy in like, hey, there's this new book, there's this curiosity. And so all these other emotions that can spring forth from joy, but starting there as the point of being.
It's amazing.
So it was extraordinary.
What else did
moment.
you get for God? I mean, that's so cool. You got to meet him and like share a meal with him, and so is that game? Was it called published? Is that
well? And that's what he said.
the
His
right
next
word,
sentence was, "We'll get this published with Random House, and if they don't want it, we'll take it somewhere else." And so,
But is that a thing with games? Is that what it's called? Published?
It's funny. It's a great question because these publishers, the normal mechanism is PDF goes to agent shops with publishers read or look at it. Maybe they don't even read it. They say, oh, it's Deepak Chopra. Yes.
Yeah.
They offer their advance, right? Or some offer hits the table and then you get a number of offers back. That's really the normal equation. And then PDF becomes book, right? That's the normal course. And with us, it's been a little bit different because we say, well, we've got this game and we want to get it published. We go to Random House, like, great, we love it. We're just going to change the cards and take out the dice. Huh. Well, wait a minute. So what did you love about the game? It's like you've got a great face for radio, you know. Love it. You're great. We'll put you on the radio. So it was a weird thing to be in that scenario. And ultimately we said no. And Deepak was resolved with it. They said, yeah, if they don't get it, they don't get it. Because they see paper. Right.
Sure.
And they know distribution with paper. And we have these dice that are acrylic and they're beautiful acrylic dice. And they go, dice? We don't produce dice, we produce paper. And so there was very much in their own thinking. And we went to a different publisher because we had several different offers on the table, mostly because of Deepak's name, because what is Graticube? Nobody knows, but they know Deepak.
Sure.
And so they said, we'd love to do this with you. And it's gone from there. So publishers are still trying to figure out how to work with the dice, but we've got a publisher that's excited to have Deepak on their shelf and excited for something new. Because
it's
Random
not out
House
yet.
didn't know the game world. They don't know the game world. It's other companies now that do games, and it goes out in next summer. So it's Andrews McMeel Universal and a champion we've got there, Betty Wong. She's definitely pushing hard to make it happen.
Nice. Congrats.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
What is this journey like for anyone that has an idea and that believes in this idea? What kind of advice would you give to someone that just is blessed with an idea and doesn't know what to do with it?
Well, follow your inspiration. You know, if that idea comes from your heart and you feel the inspiration to do it, then do it. You know, your mind may say other things. Oh, no, I have to do it this way or have to. And other people will tell you, well, you know, you have to have a day job. And how many people told me, oh, what a neat passion project. Yeah. That's like the Southern way of bless your heart, right? Which we know what that really means. We won't use those words on the podcast, but we know what that means.
Yeah.
But yeah, your passion project, and people have a way, I think mostly because they would love to do that too, but have not given themselves permission. So I would say give yourself permission to explore your heart, even in a world that feels sharp and dangerous and maybe difficult. It's going to be difficult. You're learning something new. You're going to make mistakes. I made lots of mistakes. Spent money I shouldn't have spent.
Changed it up.
Had to change it up, listen to feedback, and not listen to other feedback. You know, there's a desire sometimes to make the game work for everyone. And then you get this really watered down version of something you don't love anymore. And fortunately, some of the advice from my friends was, yeah, this is great. It's not for everyone. Keep going. Don't make it for everyone. And some people vehemently so. They said, please let this game stay the way it is because it opens people's hearts in a different way than Cards Against Humanity.
Great. Is that would you consider that kind of not a competitor, but is that in the same family of games?
No. I think that it's different. It serves its purpose perfectly. You know, if you want a drinking game, if you want to laugh, if you just want to get a little crazy, it's great.
It doesn't seem like a serious. I've only played it a handful of times,
and I think a lot of people have played it
like
a handful of times. Yeah. We went to a party, and it was Graticube, and then it's called the bigger, blacker edition, which obviously is pushing on a lot of different. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big, long black box on the table, and it's ominous in a way, right? This kind of this. Yeah, it's very phallic, right? It's got all the
bigger,
things.
blacker.
You look at it and you just go, go, that's ridiculous. You just have to laugh at it. And that's the point. We do have to laugh at ourselves. Sure. And then at some point we decide whether or not we want to have that deeper conversation. And what was beautiful is our game at the party won out. Somebody said,
Fantastic.
What's that? I don't know that. I want to play it. Another friend, I'll give you a little bit. Can I share another story?
Please, yeah, let's hear it.
So a friend of mine, she knew I was launching this game, and it was still pretty early in the timeline. And she said, "Well, I have a group of girlfriends that want to play this, and a friend that's struggling. She's having a tough time, and so all the girlfriends want to come together with her and play this game. And can we do it on Zoom because she can't travel and whatever. Everyone's in different places." And some of them are moms and all that. And I said, "Sure, let's do it on Zoom." And so I'll just facilitate. I'm not going to play, but I'll facilitate the game. Well, it turned out their friend was dying of cancer, like imminently, within a few weeks. And she'd offered, the friend that asked me, 5 different things. Cards Against Humanity was in there, and a few other connecting games that they had found. And she said, "I want to try this Graticube thing." And that was the last game they played together.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And they were all happy they did. I mean, the sense was they, if you had to think about that from the perspective of, if this were the last time you'd see this person,
Yeah.
how would you want to be with them? And I'm not saying, I don't mean to bring us down here.
No, you're
but
not.
I
No.
do think there are those moments.
That sounds beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Like that, and an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
No surprises, and then you have that actually ability and freedom to be real and truthful and present and offer like something that wasn't on the table before.
Yeah. How would your life and your life force be if that was the standard?
Sure.
Right? If you said, "I'm going to come from love, I'm going to come from me, I'm not going to worry so much about what people think, or maybe I'm going to let that go completely," that feels very freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had asked, that's an amazing answer, that like, if you believe in something, be present, believe in it. Don't like take no for an answer. Listen to what is real. Don't listen to things that would muddy kind of what your vision ultimately will be. Stay true to your vision. So I would just piggyback on that, just for the listener's sake, and like surrounding yourself with people that would support that. And, surrounding yourself and being around people that can offer something and that you can offer them tend to be the best relationships. And so that's one thing that I'm also aspiring, is like surrounding myself with people that can help me on my journey that we spoke about earlier. And it's been amazing. And so that's one thing I can offer as well, to kind of piggyback on, since I'm doing more storytelling about me than
No, I
on
love
any
it.
other podcast.
I love it.
So
No,
it's like-
it's so powerful because we connect with story, we connect with journey,
Yeah.
we connect with that truth. And the truth is, we're all on a journey of some sort, right? And some people are wearing that armor. They have their mask on. They have the heavy armor that, quote unquote, protects them.
Yeah.
And this is a game where, if you are looking to have better friends, whatever better means to you,
Sure.
a different better, right?
add value.
You add
friends
value in
that add
some way,
value,
yeah, and they make you happy. You feel happy
and
when
back,
you're with them.
back at mutual, obviously. But,
Yeah. So if you feel that uptick in energy, if it's lift and not drag, that's a good sign. It's a good sign to be around friends that lift you up. And so you might have to set down your armor and show who you really are to attract that kind of person. I think the problem with a lot of relationships is that people have their avatars meet, and the avatars work really great together. But the avatar
way of
doesn't
saying
totally represent either one of the people in there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. It's been amazing speaking with you. I can't wait to get together again. It's going to be October 8th, Sunday, 3:00. We'll have a bunch of tables set up in Beacon, and we're going to meet a lot of new friends and open our hearts and minds and get to know people on a deeper level. So I can't wait.
And what a cool thing. Thank you for the invitation. And also, when I think
Yeah.
about Beacon, it's like that thing that calls you in.
Sure.
And if you'd be willing
That's
to
the
share,
intention.
just I know we're towards the
Yeah,
end here,
no,
but
please.
how Beacon, the name came to be. I love the name. I love the idea. I love what it represents in my mind when I hear it.
Yeah, and it's exactly how it feels to you is how it came about. It took us a little while once my business partner Robert Champion and I had a lot of, all of the same ideas on the why behind we wanted to open what we're calling now Beacon, which has been great, and it resonates with people, and it's exactly what it's intended to be, is a beacon of light. It was the only awkward moment with making the decision was Beacon is across the street.
A little bit of competition if you're beckoned to go there, if the Beacon calls you in over here.
They just got a Michelin star, so I think we're all in good shape. So
That's good. Are you going to a place with a Michelin star?
yeah, exactly.
Come on down.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah,
for
what a
being on the
pleasure,
show.
man.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I look forward to Sunday, and I look forward to continuing our friendship. So
Indeed.
yeah, thank you.
you.
That's awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah.